Okay, everybody, this one is called Tyrants. Okay, they're all tyrants. So let's get going. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm a lawyer. No, I'm not a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I've provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who had no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? So it's time to get unplugged, folks. If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. And think about it, folks. That's what a militia is, right? We need to get our militias reconstituted because Edwin Vieira, if you watch my video about militias, number 3, Edwin Vieira says in there, postulates that if we don't reconstitute our militias, that we're going to have a police state. And that's exactly what we have. So are you tired of the police state yet, or do you want more? Have you had enough? All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason. It's not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So tyranny. This is John Locke. This is what the Founding Fathers were reading, folks. So, I'm surprised that people don't know this, but this is what the Founding Fathers were reading. Tyranny is the exercise of power beyond right, which nobody can have a right to do. And this is making use of the power anyone has in his hands, not for the good of those who are under it, but for his own private, separate advantage. When the governor, however entitled, makes not the law, but his will the rule, and his commands and actions are not directed to the preservation of the properties of his people, but to the satisfaction of his own ambition, revenge, covetousness, or any other regular passion. 'Tis a mistake to think this fault only in monarchies. Other forms of government are liable to it as well as that. For wherever the power that is put in any hands for the government of the people and the preservation of their properties is applied to other ends and made use of to impoverish, harass, or subdue them to the arbitrary and irregular commands of those who have it, there it presently becomes tyranny, whether those that use it are one or many. And that's John Locke, 2 Treatises of Government, Book 2, Chapter 18, Section 199 and Section 201. So that's what tyranny is, folks, and we're seeing it all over the place. That's why I say we need to get our militias going. According to Edwin Vieira, that wrote the book, Sword and the Sovereignty, a 2,500-page book. I think it's around 2,500 pages. He postulates in there that all political power comes at the barrel of a gun. And if we don't reconstitute our militia, then we're going to have a police state. Well, guess what? That's exactly what we've got. So in the Declaration of Independence, 1776, the preamble, okay, this is only part of it. The preamble is quite lengthy. And so, but the preamble says the history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And that's in the preamble. And if you think about it, the Declaration of Independence is basically a list of grievances. So I have all of the grievances in here. Some of them aren't happening today, I think maybe because we haven't figured out how they're happening. But there's a bunch of them that are. He's refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. So he refuses to assent to laws. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. I can see that happening today, although I don't think it has, but that certainly we have tyrants. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant for the depository of our public records, distant from the depository of our public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. So, yeah, I see that happening. They go and do stuff that's very, very difficult or unusual. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. So we haven't done that as far as I know. I think that would be like major problem if he did. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of an annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. So basically what he's done is dissolve the legislature and then there's vacancies and he doesn't appoint anybody or get them elected or anything. So he's basically, he's denying your right to have a lawful government. He's endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. So encouraging their migrations hither. Gee, that sounds like open borders and election interference. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Gee, that sounds like kangaroo courts. He's made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. That sounds like kangaroo courts again. Of course, that's not happening nowadays, but we certainly have kangaroo courts, executive branch. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, bar members 1 through 8, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail 1 and 2, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts 1 through 28 now, Canada Border Pigs playlist, bar members and their satanic connections playlist. And we continue with the Declaration of Independence. He's erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Gee, that sounds like court enforcers everywhere, military police everywhere. You have all these bureaucrats running around and always demanding money for something. He's kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Gee, that sounds like martial law. He's affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. That sounds like martial law. He's combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Well, that's martial law and color of law, and everything under martial law is color of law. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, that's a military dictatorship. For protecting them by a mock trial, kangaroo courts, show trials, denials of due process. If there's anything, anywhere where you get your rights violated, it's in the so-called courts. From punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent. That's martial law. We're going to talk about that in a minute. For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. That's military dictatorship. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. That's bringing color of law outside not exceeding 10 miles square under violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And so obviously they were taking them back to England, but that's exactly what's going on. They call it beyond seas, even if you read in their Code of Law for the District of Columbia. For abolishing a free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government. Gee, that sounds like a military dictatorship. And enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule. That's military dictatorship. District of Columbia military dictatorship outside not exceeding 10 miles square into these colonies. And that's dictatorship. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. That's a martial law dictatorship. For suspending our own legislatures, declaring themselves invested with the power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. Gee, that sounds like going and peddling, selling our money. I think that's going to come up here. He's abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. That's martial law, military dictatorship under the Trading with the Enemy Act. He's plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our town, destroys the lives of our people. That's military dictatorship, populating the jails with commercial transactions. Texas has a bigger percentage of people in jail than the worst communist dictatorship, more than China, more than the Soviet Union. He's at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty, perfidy, which is deceitfulness and untrustworthiness, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. That's military-age people coming across the border. Gee, that sounds like that's what's going on. He's constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. Gee, that sounds like conscription, military dictatorship. He's excited domestic insurrections amongst us. That's false flag attacks, folks. He has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontier, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. That kill anybody and everybody. So in the summary of, that's all the list of grievances there, by the way. At the end, there's a summary. Now, this is only a small part of it. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may be defined a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. And well said. And that's the same today. Are we free or are we slaves? This is a declaration by the representatives of the United Colonies of North America, now met in Congress at Philadelphia, setting forth the causes and necessity for taking up arms. 6th of July, 1775. Remember, the Declaration of Independence was 1776. This is 2 days short of a year before. The legislature of Great Britain, however, stimulated by an inordinate passion for a power not only unjustifiable, attempted to effect their cruel and politic purpose of enslaving these colonies by violence, and thereby rendered it necessary for us to close with their last appeal from reason to arms. So, cause the necessity for taking up arms, okay? And then they go through, and there's a bunch of things they talk in there about why they're taking up arms. They have undertaken to give and grant our money without our consent. Well, gee, that sounds like foreign aid. So they're giving away foreign aid and forcing you to pay taxes. Statutes have been passed for the extending the jurisdiction of the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty beyond their ancient limits, for depriving us the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, Well, that's happening today. There is no trials by jury that happen. Matter of fact, they cannot give you a trial by jury. And in fact, if you demand a trial by jury and tell them that the jury conducts the trial and the War of Independence was fought over it and the supreme law of the land requires it, then they'll probably drop the case. I know people that do it, and the case gets dropped. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, gee, that sounds like a dictatorship. It has also been resolved by Parliament that colonists charged with committing certain offenses shall be transported to England to be tried. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. To supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. Gee, that sounds like martial law. We've counted the cost of this contest and find nothing so dreadful as voluntary slavery. And that's really what it comes down to, folks. This actually document is like about 4 pages, so there's a lot of stuff in there. This is, you see the dots, that's where stuff is left out. Didn't have enough room on here. And so you ought to read it yourself. I think you'd find it interesting. The refusal of King George to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. So fake money precipitated the revolution. See, back here says they've undertaken to give and grant our money without our consent. Okay, so that's talking about the fake money. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman. That from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment whatever payable on any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. And that's George III, Chapter 12, 1778, 2 years. 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. That's kind of like closing the barn door after the horses get out. Patrick Henry coined the phrase, give me liberty or give me death, after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. So this guy didn't want to enter into a contract, and he didn't want to pay a tax, and so they killed him for it. License is a contract, a right given by some competent authority to do an act, which without such authority would be illegal. The instrument or writing which secures this right is also called a license. A license is express or implied. An express license is one which in direct terms authorizes the performance of a certain act, as a license to keep a tavern by public authority. An implied license is one which, though not expressly given, may be presumed from the acts of the party having the right to give it. So that's filing fees. And if you don't pay it, they won't give you justice. They're going to let you go and get killed by these fucking pigs. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the military and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. So it's always about taxes. When there's taxes, it's martial law, folks. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 100 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the forced loans, the fake money, the securities, the cash app gifts, the checks, the money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. The end of democracy and the defeat of the American Revolution will occur when government falls into the hands of the lending institutions and moneyed corporations. So there you go. Welcome to the police state. Welcome to the dictatorship. Welcome to your democracy that these pigs keep telling you have. It's tyrants, folks. Lincoln. This is a statue in Lincoln in the city of London. He's actually in Westchester, which is real close to the city of London. So why would they have a statue of Lincoln in the city of London? Well, maybe because he did them a great favor. He's their hero. He went and imposed martial law. See where that red dot is right here? That's where his statue's at. This is the city of London over here. This over here is the Inns of Court, Lincoln's Inn, and this one over here, this is Lincoln's Inn right here. This is another law school, Gray's Inn, I think. If you go there, you'll find it. I don't want to zoom in. I can't zoom in on this particular shot. So, but anyways, that's all in the city of London. It says because there's 4 law schools. Inns of Court is one of them. Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, and there's another one. I can't remember what it is. But this is where Lincoln's statue is. There's this Lincoln statue is in the city of London. It's actually in Westchester. We go back here. City of Westminster, which is, I mean, London is probably like any other big city. It's got all sorts of these little cities, right? Most people don't have the courage to share this. The City of London Corporation, this small little country that almost no one has heard about, funded all sides of World War I, World War II, and will start World War III if we do not stop them. Okay, that their outline is a wall. That area is got a wall around it, and it's foreign territory to the rest of England. It was never conquered by William the Conqueror. And the Imperial Parliament is in there. And when the Queen goes to the Imperial Parliament, she has to go to a gate in that wall somewhere called Temple Bar, and she has to get permission to go through. The bitch. And now it's the son of a bitch. Anyways, so they're all tyrants. All of these courts. A court can be a court of general jurisdiction for some purposes and a court of limited jurisdiction for other purposes. When, therefore, a court of general jurisdiction proceeds under a special statute, it becomes a court of limited jurisdiction for the purposes of such proceeding. Accordingly, where a court of general jurisdiction undertakes to carry out a special power, a decision made in the exercise of such power is treated as a ruling of a court of limited jurisdiction, and the presumption applicable to a court of general jurisdiction that it acted within the scope of its jurisdiction does not apply. And so that's Book 20, that's of American Jurisprudence, 2D, Courts, Section 103, second edition, American Jurisprudence, second edition. And the first one is 21, Corpus Juris Secundum, Section 2. So they go and spread that stuff around because they don't want you knowing about it. They're a bunch of thieves. Whoops. It is familiar law that when a special statutory authority in derogation of common law, I want you to remember that, derogation of common law, is conferred on courts of general jurisdiction, such court becomes quad hoc, a court of inferior or limited jurisdiction. Okay, that's what they're talking about there in Corpus Juris Secundum and American Jurisprudence. Inferior or limited jurisdiction and derogation of common law. They're always in derogation of common law. That's why they wear that black robe military uniform. A ministerial duty is one which is required by statute. A ministerial act is an act that a public officer is required to perform in a prescribed manner in obedience to the mandate of legal authority and without regard to his own judgment or opinion regarding such act's propriety or impropriety when a given state of facts exists. Discretion, on the other hand, is the power conferred on public functionaries to act officially according to the dictates of their own judgment. The word administrative is synonymous with the word executive. The word executive connotes of or pertains to administration. I should say the word administrative connotes of or pertains to administration, especially management, by managing or conducting or superintending the execution, application, or conduct of persons or things. Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition. Oh, that needs to be fixed. Thus, administrative acts are those acts which are necessarily be done carried out by legislative policies and purposes already declared by the legislative body. In fact, it is common to use two words in tandem. Where a controversy is such a character as to require the exercise of judicial power defined by Article 3, jurisdiction thereof, can be conferred only on courts established in virtue of that article, and Congress is without power to vest that judicial power in any other judicial tribunal, or of course in any executive officer or administrative executive board, since they are incapable of receiving it. So they're incapable of being an Article 3 court. It's only the court of general jurisdiction. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering and enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. Okay, they're bought and paid for. It's not a court. It's an executive branch kangaroo court. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency. It is the accepted rule, not only in the state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a ministerial clerk for the agency, a bought and paid for whore. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislatures. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It's a kangaroo court. Where any state proceeds against a private individual in the judicial forum, it's well settled that the state, county, municipality waives any immunity to counters, cross-claims, or complaints by direct or collateral means regarding the matters involved. When enforcing mere statutes, judges of all courts do not act judicially, and thus are not protected by qualified or limited immunity. Law of the land means common law. So now we're going to talk about common law. Remember, they're acting in derogation of common law. So you're not going to get due process of law. They do not have any intention of giving you due process of law. Everything they do is a violation of due process. What is due process of law may be ascertained by an examination of those settled usages and modes of proceedings existing in the common and statute law of England before the emigration of our ancestors. The expressions due process of law and law of the land have the same meaning. The law intended by the Constitution is the common law that had come down to us from our forefathers, that has existed and was understood and administered when that instrument was framed and adopted. The principle that no person should be deprived of life, liberty, or property except by due process of law did not originate with the American system of constitutional law, but was contained in the Magna Carta, sometimes referred to as Chapter 29, confirmed on the 19th day of June, 1215, declared, no freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or deceased or outlawed or exiled in any way destroyed. Now shall we go upon him nor send upon him but the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. It has been said that the principle was known before Magna Carta and that it was originally designed to secure the subject against arbitrary action of the Crown and to place him under the protection of the law. It is settled beyond question that this principle came from England to America as a part of the common law and has been a fundamental rule in common law. When first adopted in Magna Carta, the phrase law of the land had reference to the common law and has been a fundamental rule in common law. And that's Book 16 of American Jurisprudence, 2nd edition, Constitutional Law, Section 543. These kangaroo courts intend to deny you due process. When they deny due process, they lose subject matter jurisdiction. You got to build a case against the bastards. The words by the law of the land as here used do not mean a statute passed for the working of the wrong. This section was taken with some modifications from a part of the 29th chapter of the Magna Carta, which provided that no freeman could be taken or imprisoned or be disseized of his freehold, etc., but by the lawful judgment of the peers of the law of the land. Lord Coke, in his commentary upon this statute, say these words by the law of the land mean by the due process, course, and process of law, which he afterwards explains to be by indictment and presentment of good and lawful men where such deeds were done in due manner or by writ original of the common law. If persons can be restrained of their liberty and assaulted and imprisoned under such circumstances without complaint or warrant, when there's no limit on the power of the police officer, any law that would place the keeping and safe conduct of another in the hands of even a conservator of the peace, unless for some breach of the peace committed in his presence or upon suspicion of felony, would be most oppressive and unjust, and destroy all the rights which our Constitution guarantees. These are rights which existed long before our Constitution, and we have taken just pride in their maintenance, making them a part of the fundamental law of the land. They need to get rid of that nasty little common law problem because they get their necks stretched. If we had some Christians in this country, if a man be found stealing in of his brethren and the children of Israel, maketh merchandise of him or selleth him, then that beast shall die, and thou shalt put evil away from among you. It's too bad we don't have any Christians in this country because they'd be getting their necks stretched if they did. Cases involving deprivations or transfers of life, liberty, or property constitute a core of cases that must be resolved by Article 3 courts, not executive administrators dressed up as courts. And that's actually Justice Thomas concurring with this constitutionally conforming agency adjudication. Be the statutes that would deprive a citizen of the rights of person or property without a regular trial according to the course and usage of common law would not be the law of the land. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statute is required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. As a general rule, men have the natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself and in no ways impairs the rights of others. They don't have standing either. My opinion is, and long has been, that the mayor and aldermen of a city corporation or the president directors of a bank or the president directors of a railroad company or other similar corporations are the true parties that sue and are sued as trustees and representatives of the constantly changing stockholders. A corporation, therefore, not being a natural person but a mere creature of the mind, invisible and intangible, cannot be a citizen of a state or the United States and cannot fall within the terms of the power of the above-mentioned article and can therefore neither plead nor be impleaded in the courts of the United States. They're all territorial courts. The federal courts, there is no Article 3 courts. Except the Supreme Court when it's not acting as the Supreme Court of the District of Columbia. The United States District Court is not a true United States court established under Constitutional Article 3 to administer the judicial power of the United States, but was created by virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty granted under Article 4, Section 3 of making all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory belonging to the people. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety in circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. That's why we have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. Hello, it's time to wake up, folks. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Derogation of common law means an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. They're all inferior courts of limited jurisdiction. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in state enactment provide for exceptions to its application. Derogation of common law means it's an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. Under a military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes which are edicts for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates a democracy, and under military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law. You'll never see justice in those so-called courts. I have exclusive content available on my website, sovereigntyinternational.fyi. I've got 2 subscription levels, and I can accept cryptocurrencies, credit cards, Cash App, and Zelle. Basic subscription levels are $59.99 a year. The platinum subscription level is $89.99 a year for videos plus unlimited email consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. No, I'm a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Some of the exclusive content is an Arlington private information share. That's 7 videos by itself. There's also land deed training. There's estoppel certificates training. There's foreclosure estoppel certificates training. There's corporate denial training. There's toll roads notice and demand training. There's invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, challenge to standing training. That's a new one. Criminal complaint training. There's about 3 videos on that, and I need to do more. I've been tweaking that and getting it better. Lawsuit training, I got 1 video on that. I need to make more. Other training requests, I'm open to it. Somebody mentioned to do something on how to deal with CPS. The best way to deal with them is to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. Excuse me. In other words, go on the attack before they ever see you coming. If you think there's any possibility that they might want to have some interest in your posterity, find out who the local bureaucrat is and start sending them notice and demands. Take away their presumptions. Put them in the position that you can break it off in their ass if they even look at you wrong. That's what I do. After the fact, it's very difficult. What you'd have to do if you're like they're sticking you for this child support payments or some other extortion that they're doing, you got to reopen the case. And I can make a video on that. We'll have to think about it. So there's Northeast Private Information Shares. There's going to be now HowTube has been having trouble, and so they're supposed to have their website up soon, I hope. In the meanwhile, I put it all on my website, but there's going to be a petition for writ of mandamus, and every state is going to be different on how to do that. And so far I've got New York and I've got Texas and Florida that I'm working on. There's going to be the videos that'll be on HowTube. The videos that YouTube took down are going to be up on HowTube when that ever gets back up. And there's going to be first views of all new uploads will be on HowTube too. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked in my videos and on my website. And the exclusive content is available right now on my website at sovereigntyinternational.fyi. And once HowTube gets up, then we'll put it up there. The said Supreme Court shall divide the said district into 10 subdistricts and prescribe the place in each subdistrict where the justice thereof shall have his office for the transaction of business, and may change the boundaries of such subdistricts and locations of offices and justices therein from time to time as the volume and convenience of business may require. That's found in the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1190. All corporations are in a zip code, okay? That's the sub-district. All government offices are in a zip code. The United States Postal Service is a corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. That's why they had to set it up. So they had a corporation, because the U.S. Post Office was actually set up before the Constitution. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agency of the bitch in Canada, or the son of a bitch now. And definitions, own means subject to the regulations. If you're subject to the regulations, you're owned. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting territory. Actually, that's the part that's missing. Territory or other property belong to the United States. That's Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. And again, if you're subject to the regulations, you're property. Should a suit be brought against any party or corporation in any district in which he or it does not reside or hold business, a plea to the jurisdiction on this account may be filed by said dependent, a party to the corporation. The party or corporation interposing such plea shall disclose under oath the district in which he or it should have been sued. That's why they have to, they're all in zip codes. That's why they all put down zip codes, because they're all corporations and they're all in the District of Columbia. The Code of Law for the District of Columbia, Chapter 18, 31 Stat 1280, is entitled Corporations, and it's a huge chapter, and it's gotten way bigger since, 1901. To regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. That's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. When you incorporate into the government. Everything subject to regulations is government property. A corporation's a franchise from the government. It's a dictatorship. It's not negotiable. You do what they tell you, or they'll put you in jail. It's that simple. They are using the Commerce Clause to impose their tyranny. It's tyrants. They're nothing but tyrants. We therefore decline to overrule opinion Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. Status is a corporation has no status as a citizen outside the district where it was created. A corporation is a citizen. A citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the District of Columbia. The law of status, the category of law dealing with personal or non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam. It is one of the three departments in civil law is divided. Okay, and remember, civil law, Roman civil law, and civil law are convertible phrases and are talking about, and municipal law. They're all convertible. Definitions. As used in this section, this is Public Law 100-418, 102 Stat 1344. Yeah. The term United States business means the United States citizen. They're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 Mile Square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, which says to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 Mile Square. Plenary. Remember? Plenary power, through their plenary power right here, right there, through their plenary power. Plenary jurisdictions accord full and absolute power over the subject matter and the parties in the case. Plenary is full, complete, entire, Black's 9th. That's Black's 8th and 9th. Plenary, full, complete in the courts of admiralty and the English ecclesiastical courts, causes or suits in respect of different course of proceedings are each termed. Why do you think that whore is wearing that black robe military uniform? Plenary. This is Wikipedia. A plenary power or plenary authority is a complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. It's derived from the Latin term plenus. Now, Wikipedia, who knows whether that's correct or not, but it says the same thing as the Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School. Plenary power. Complete power over a particular area with no limitation. This term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress, and that's plenary power. Article 1, U.S. Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. These tyrants are perjuring their oath to support the supreme law of the land. Why is that a surprise? They're tyrants, folks. They're tyrants. My Trump book is now available. Trump, a true American patriot or not. This is the back of the book. Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and so he's on it because he had to babysit me for 6 months to get ready to publish. But he hired a company to help us with it, and they wrote the stuff on the back, and I think they nailed it. It says, in Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Fern and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult in our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? And Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And I think they nailed it. Anyways, you can order the book from Amazon.com or my website. It's $40 plus shipping. I prefer you order from my website. Amazon does not provide autographed books. If you want the book autographed, order from my website. You want to know the origins of the deep state? Who's behind it? Do you want to know why it's called the Trump administration? You know, there's nothing they do that's by accident. Do you want to know what an administration is? Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? Do you want to know who owns Congress? Why do you think Nancy Pelosi gets up there and says, we can't read this bill until after we pass it? Well, first of all, she's a tyrant when she does that, okay? But she's taking orders from the owners. Congress is owned. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Because they're enforcing the martial law. Do you want to know how you become a slave? If you're paying taxes, then you're forced to work to the government for nothing. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's in the book. It's the same thing that's happening now. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? It's in the book. And we talked about the root cause of the War of Independence earlier on in this video. So Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and it took me about 6 weeks to write the book because all I did is took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book. And then he had to babysit me for 6 months to get ready to publish. That's why I put him on the book, but I wrote the book. Jerome Corsi, Trump was invited to run. Jerome Corsi is a guy that lives up in the Northeast. He's got a website. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got a PhD in political science from Harvard University, and he's written a bunch of books. And there's a YouTube video where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him, and they said they were going to overthrow Obama. And Jerome Corsi told him, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. 3 months later, he gets a phone call they decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. So because I took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book, it's 95% provable facts. It's some opinion. There's a little bit of opinion. Some of the opinion is that most of these billionaires get approached by the New World Order crowd and get told you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. And Howard Hughes is a good example. I think that's why he was hiding out. Matter of fact, I've since learned some other things, and Donald Trump is another good example. I think he was approached too. There was a helicopter crash in 1984, and the three of his executives got killed. I happen to know a little bit about helicopters. I started out working as a mechanic on helicopters in 1976. And so I know a little bit about helicopters, and I can tell you that they don't crash for the reasons that helicopter crashed. The blades came off. I have never, ever, ever heard of a helicopter crashing because the blades came off. And I think that was sabotage myself, because helicopters crash for a lot of reasons, but never for the blades coming off. Then there's David Wilcock video. David Wilcock has a video where he says that after World War II, Howard Hughes got blackballed and he couldn't get any defense contracts. So he got some women to go and sleep with the New World Order, the military-industrial complex types, to find out how come he wasn't getting any defense contracts. And that's why he found out that they were planning on doing what they're going to do now. They wanted to have a pandemic. They want to have a world war. They want to kill off about 90% of us and have a global plantation. And so Howard Hughes had actually set up some manuals and procedures on how to defeat the whole thing. And Kennedy was actually implementing that stuff. Remember, Kennedy came out a week before he was killed and said that he was going to expose the secret combination. And then Kennedy got killed. His brother got killed. A bunch of other people got killed. I think Howard Hughes figured he was on the list, and so that's why he was hiding out. Anyways, that's my opinion. In reality, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. And a lot of people say that Trump is part of the controlled opposition, and maybe he is. I don't know. But if we, the people, get off our ass and start taking care of business, it doesn't matter who's the president. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. That's Article 4, Section 4, Section 4. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's Article 2, an amendment. And then in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 and 16, it talks about how the president can call up the militia. So according to, and this is where you need to read that Dr. Edwin Vieira's book, or watch that video at least that I have on militias, because he goes through and explains about that a militia was intended to be a permanent part of the Constitution, and we have completely let it just die. And we need to reconstitute our militias, or we're going to have a police state. And that's exactly what's happened, is we do have a police state. And anyways, so again, if the American people get off their backside and start taking care of business, then a lot of our problems are going to go away. My blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted. I have a private group on Facebook. I haven't been on Facebook for months, maybe years, and I have no interest in going there. It's put together by the NSA and that crowd to basically, they want you to volunteer to give your information to them. And so I'm not going to go there. Sorry. I'd like to delete that group, but I can't until I ban everybody off of it. And there's 17,000 people on there. So, I don't think that's going to happen. Anyways, I got a private group on freelist.org called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have another one on Google Groups called Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International, on HowTube, Sovereignty International, on Rumble, Sovereignty International. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember what the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. And well said, and it is a very sad day. Very sad day. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. So all you people that don't want to get off your backside and do anything, well, I guess I don't know, you're going to be held accountable, I think. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video on YouTube. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam, don't forget to vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already clicked, otherwise it'd be red. The bell is not looking like it's vibrating, so it needs to be clicked. That's why the arrow is pointing at it. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think that's an accident? Anybody who calls a democracy is engaged in treason. And this is part of the Star Chamber courts, okay? They want to sell you into slavery. And it's a military dictatorship, and so the corrupt Star Chamber courts of England required defendants to have counsel. Star Chamber stood for swiftness and arbitrary power. It was a limitation on the common law, and that's U.S. Supreme Court. Taxes or tribute. If you're in taxes, it's all martial law. Taxes cause the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. You're forced to work for them for nothing. It's becoming more and more difficult to be free. This is McCullough versus Maryland. All subjects over the sovereign power over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt, are upon the soundest principles exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced self-evident, may almost be pronounced self-evident. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its own authority or is introduced by its permission, but it does not extend to those means, but does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. Those powers are given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are declared to be supreme. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. This is like really powerful. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. That's McCullough versus Maryland, 1819, 1818, something like that. The power which is derived cannot be greater than that from which it is derived. That's a maxim of law, Bluey's Law Dictionary. So you have the Congress tyranny, the military dictatorship, bar members, and the District of Columbia. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. They are not your friend, okay? They are the enemy. They are tyrants. Everything they do is a fraud and a nullity. They're Satanists. Judge works for the state. Prosecutor works for the state. Police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, with the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the pigs, all represent the same party, and since no corpus electi, mens rea or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof a party shall have been duly convicted. So they sell you into slavery. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and his humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. So they're tyrants, and they need to get their necks stretched. If we had some people and some Christians in this country, that's what would be happening. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We can have a benevolent dictator or a tyrant dictator. Obama was a textbook tyrant. Tyrant Pelosi gets up and tells the House, we can't read this bill until after we approve it. Lindsey Williams is a Southern Baptist preacher that used to come out and for the last 20 or 30 years, matter of fact, since the 60s, I guess, when they did the Alaska pipeline, he used to come out and he went up there and he was basically preaching the gospel to the people on the pipeline, and they liked what he was doing, so they invited him to their board meetings, and he met some of the movers and shakers and got to know him, some of the elite. He called them the elite. And so then every 2 or 3 years, he'd come out and say, this is what the elite are planning on doing, and then you'd see it happening. And what happened is when Trump won the election, he came out and he said the elite told him that God had intervened, and that once Trump was out of office, their plans were on hold until Trump was back in office, and once Trump was out of office, they'd be back to business as usual. So rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. It's time to get unplugged, folks. This is Jefferson's seal. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. America needs God. It's about time we started asking for God's assistance. It's all corporate law. They always attack you with the corporation. All corporations are in the District of Columbia with plenary jurisdiction. No corporation is standing to say anything to any man or woman. It's all coming from the Roman cult and their sestike usufruct, which is fraud, deception, and necromancy. It's satanic, folks. This is literally a war of good versus evil. They are tyrants. They're all tyrants. You will never see justice in their so-called court. It's warfare. You have to treat it like warfare. The best defense is the best offense. Never, ever tell them what's coming. They are your enemy. You are their enemy. It's about time to start waking up to what's going on, folks. This is warfare. We are at war, whether you like it or not. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.